Damon Brown. Welcome to Bring Your Worth TV. Thank you for coming through. Hopefully, you got your robe on and you're chilling just like I am. I'm entrepreneur coach Damon Brown. I'm here to support you as a side hustler, a solopreneur, otherwise a non-traditional entrepreneur. You're watching Bring Your Worth TV. Come to you live on Wednesdays at 1:11 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Vegas time. You subscribe for free at your favorite platform, whether it's Twitch, whether it's LinkedIn, or if you're at the main channel at this point at bringyourworth.tv. You can subscribe for free, and also my complete Bring Your Worth collection, my 27th book, is available now wherever books are sold. Hopefully, fine books. Chime in if you get the joke. It has 7 of my business books in here, including some of them that y'all made a bestseller, including the Bites Entrepreneur, Bring Your Worth, which of course is the name of my publishing company and the show, and my personal favorite, Build From Now: How to Know Your How to Know Your Power. I can't even get it out. How to know your power, see your abundance, and nourish the world. I'm gonna need some of this coffee down here because that I'm a little bit too relaxed today. But check it out. If you happen to be abroad, or if you want to go ahead and listen to it after we're done hanging out, you can go and click on the link right there and actually listen to it for free at brainwork.tv. It's about 8 hours long. Again, it's about 7 or so books, so it's a lot going on in there. But I wanted to give y'all a gift so that you can get it wherever you're at. Certain places don't have audiobooks, so you might not have access to it. A lot of y'all that I coach are abroad. Check it out if you want to go and get into it. It's my gift to you. And of course, you can go ahead and watch Bring Your Earth TV and check it out now on Twitch and also on Spotify. The older episodes are available on Spotify now. Be sure and check them out. What's happening this month? It's February already. I can't believe it. I'm in shock, probably as much as you are, that the year is moving so quickly. We're already into February. It's been action packed, particularly here in the United States. I don't need to say more than that. And this month, though, we got some good stuff happening. We have the IIJ conference. It's the Institute of Independent Journalists, emphasis on freelancers. If you've been following the channel or you know my work, you've worked with me, then you know I have 2 degrees in journalism, masters in magazine publishing, been a freelancer for a very long time. We'll put it like that. It's in the decades. And so I support and love the work that they're doing. It's led by Catherine Reynolds Lewis. Shout out to her. I so appreciate your work, but we talk all the time, so you already know that. And she really wanted to establish an organization that was focused on strictly on freelancers and also people who are trying to make a particular impact when it comes to diversifying the discussions that are happening within the newsroom. It's a hot topic now. Who would have thought? Journalism is a hot topic. Hopefully not controversial if you're a watcher of the show, but you know the vibes. This is an excellent conference. I actually spoke at it. I think it might have been the first annual one a year or two ago, and I was involved behind the scenes and a little bit in front of the scenes last year. I'm not involved this year, but I know it's going to be a banger. Some fantastic keynote speakers they have lined up. Just go and click on the link. Tell them I sent you. You can do discount code Damon, Damon, and yeah, get involved. I know they had an early bird, and I think they ended it, but they ended up extending it over the weekend. It might still be happening. You might get lucky. You might get lucky like Daft Punk. So go ahead and check it out, see what's happening. In case you missed it, we had 2 bangers last week. The first one was how to ask for what you want. That was a live show exactly a week ago. We had some great conversations. Shout out to y'all that came through, including Octavia and some other folks. Thank you. I appreciate y'all. We had a great conversation talking about negotiation, talking about how to show up as yourself, and talking about how to continue to have a healthy relationship while setting up those boundaries, whether it's you and a corporation, it's you and a spouse, it's you and a loved one, it's you and a business partner, it's you and a friend. It addresses all those things. And it being a longer episode too. We approach almost an hour and a half because there's so many great questions that came through with y'all in the audience. Be sure and check it out. Check out the replay. And in case you missed it, a few days ago, Kendrick Lamar actually swept the Grammys. He got 5 Grammy Awards. I think that might have been the record for the night, but you can plug into the comments and let me know. I didn't watch the whole ceremony, but I did watch quite a few clips of it. I ended up doing a special episode that evening on Sunday night, excuse me, talking about his influence, why he's not quote unquote the average rapper, how he ended up getting the Pulitzer Prize a few years ago for his album Damn, which I think was in 2019. Again, you can correct me in the comments. Um, and then why he swept the Grammys with just one song. Powerful place to be. And this is also important too because if you're a sports fan or if you're not a sports fan and you're a hip hop fan, then you know that he's going to be headlining the Super Bowl in a few days here in the United States. It'll be Sunday in one of my hometowns, New Orleans. Shout out to y'all. And I'm glad y'all are healing after some of the chaos during the holidays. But this is, hey, if New Orleansers know anything, it's how to party. So you guys have a wonderful time there. Wish I could be there, but I got other stuff going on. And it's going to be kind of chaotic with the Super Bowl. I'm not a big football fan. We had the Super Bowl here exactly a year ago when Usher, if you pronounce it correctly, Usher had performed. And I live in Las Vegas, and it was a mess. So hopefully New Orleans has the infrastructure because we're a fairly well infrastructured city, and even we were tied up. I was trying to get to. I was trying to. I had a business meeting on the strip. Let me get my mic right. I had a business meeting on the strip, and I think I ended up just canceling it. I was like, I'm not gonna be able to make it, y'all, because I'm on one end of the strip, they were on the other end. And I was like, that ain't gonna happen. Woo, man. But it's going to be a blast. Again, it's available. It's available on, I think, all the platforms. So go and check it out. Enjoy the video. All right, today, you might be like, Damon, why are you wearing a robe? Where, where's the blazer? Where are your clothes? We're going to talk about how to rest at home. How to rest at home. This is important for a numerous amount of reasons. I talk about it more in my weekly newsletter. Comes out every Wednesday at I almost said 111, 5:55 a.m. my time, so Vegas time, West Coast time, Pacific time, depending on where you live. And I talked about it today. So you guys that get the newsletter already checked it out. But I entitled "Going Nowhere Fast," where we have a sense of urgency with what we do. Um, to paraphrase the wonderful Dr. Tricia Hersey, who we're going to be talking about a little bit later, to paraphrase the quote, my favorite quote right now is that urgency is based on our fear of the future. In other words, there's a sense of anxiety that we have as far as if we're doing enough, if we are enough, if we're showing up enough. And so that becomes anxiousness. That becomes the fear that we have. What are we doing? Can we do more? That push. There's so many things that are happening in the world right now that are based on this fear of us being left behind. And that fear of us being left behind comes from, I would argue, two places. The first thing is that we feel like that everyone else is taking everything, so we're not going to get ours, right? So that goes back to a scarcity mindset, as a psychologist would say. The second part of it is that we're afraid that we're actually not going to get what we're worth. We feel like that we're only worth a certain amount. And so if we hustle harder, if we do more, if we push harder, then maybe, just maybe, we'll actually be good enough to get what we deserve or to be taken care of. That's a scary place to be. And I can't speak for you, but I've been in that place. Um, and I had loved ones, mentors, coaches, therapists. We'll talk about therapy in a minute. Folks that kind of pulled me out of that. And especially, I've been independent for, again, decades. So independent startups, independent as a freelancer for, again, decades, independently coaching. You can learn more about my coaching at damebrown.net. The amount of traditional jobs I've held, I can count on one hand. So when you're doing the independent, sorry, electronics have a mind of their own today. When you're doing the independent hustle and you're doing that approach, it's easy to focus on the hustle rather than the independent. Hustle means that you're going to create a lane for yourself and not depend on anyone else. Hustle does not mean you burn yourself out. We need to find ways, particularly in such um, a paradigm shift in the world right now, similar to when we were dealing with the pandemic 5 years ago, which is when my book, Built From Now, came out. Again, it's available in here. And similar to that, where if you remember 2020, even late 2019 for, my people that are over in Asia, because y'all get impacted first. And we had to find new ways to take care of ourselves. So remember, we were doing like we as in general, we were doing like the sour bread starters and learn to make bread at home. We're going to be like, nah, I don't want to do this job or this career anymore. So I feel like I'm going to go in this other direction. The Great Resignation came out around that time. Those things happened because things were so chaotic that we had to find new ways to take care of ourselves and our each other. I feel like we're on the precipice of another one if we're not already in it. I'm already in it. I mean, again, I'm wearing a robe on Wednesday afternoon. So if we're going to take that approach, then let's do it thoughtfully and let's call it down to the necessities. Like, how urgent do things need to be? How fast can the world turn? Just because other people are feeling urgent, then that doesn't mean that you have to be in a rush. And I mean this in the broadest way possible, not just career wise. And as again, Dr. Hersey talks about, and I talk about that again in my newsletter today. Just go to joindamon.me. It has all my newsletters. As I talk about in going nowhere fast, sometimes ends up being a strategy for people or organizations who don't want to see you prosper. They want you to be anxious. They want you to be whiplash, as a therapist told me recently. They want you to have whiplash. So, in you learning to take care of yourself, you learning to put on your robe and be like, all right, I'm going to take the day or I'm going to take this moment. And we'll talk about how you can do that. In doing that, rest is resistance and it is active rebellion. Me calmly, hopefully calmly, haven't my coffee yet. We'll know by the end of the episode, but me calmly talking to you about ways that you can carve rest into your life in a time where there seems to be so much chaos. That in itself is an act of rebellion. So let's join the rebellion. No Star Wars. If you're gonna go deeper into it, I talk about in the newsletter. It's not super long, but there's a lot of good gems in there where we'll go deeper. So if I'm going to rest at home, you're asking Damon, how do I make time for rest? I own several businesses. Most of them I'm the sole proprietor. Darn near all I'm the sole proprietor. Got two little kids. They're 8 and 11. I'm at home with them, so I'm one of those very active parents. And how do you carve out space within that? Well, I think it comes down to a few different things. The first thing, and shout out to Tim Ferriss, who first talked about this, is if you're going to make time to rest, don't wait for the grand gestures. Oh, the hands are coming. New Jersey's coming out, but don't wait for the grand gestures. What I mean by that is, I always think about with I still travel quite a bit, but it's a little bit less, now that I have a young family. But I remember traveling a lot when I was younger and getting out there and being broke as a joke, as we used to say, but still getting to Japan, still getting over to Europe, like, still getting up to Canada. Shout out to the folks at TED, like getting all over the place. And then seeing folks who were at that time, they had to be like my great grandmother's age, rest in peace to her. And so they had to be in their 80s, maybe 90s. And they're barely getting around while I was still in my 20s traveling. Now, sometimes it's like that, and that doesn't mean that age necessarily dictates health, but it's kind of the point. What Tim Ferriss had gotten into back with, I believe it's called the 4 Hour Work Week, right? This very famous book. We often will wait and have this delayed gratification, even beyond that, and say, one day I'm going to get to Paris. And we might be able to get the financial means together. We might even be able to get the time off. But for whatever reason, we're pushing it into the ether. And sometimes we don't make it. I've had really intense health scares, and I was much younger than I am now. And perhaps a lot of y'all have, and empathy and sympathy to y'all. So if you're going to say, I'm going to rest when the kids get into high school, I'm going to rest when my partner finishes their degree. I'm going to rest when my parents who are older get settled in wherever they're getting settled at. I will rest when my kids get married. At a certain point, those are excuses. At a certain point, they're excuses. If you have the means to watch my show or to grab my books or to even consider buying a robe, then you probably have the means to take 15 minutes per day to rest. You probably have those means. My family's from the hood in South Jersey. So there are folks I understand, even in my family, who do not have the means. I get that. I respect it. But most of us, if you're hanging out with me right now, randomly on a Wednesday, you probably got the means. If you're watching this on $1,000 phone, you probably got the means to give yourself a break. The problem with the big gestures is that we end up waiting to do something massive. And we're talking to someone and they said, no, I don't want to just go on a vacation. I want to go to the Maldives, which I've never been to. I heard they're beautiful. I look forward to going to them one day. So no shot to the Maldives. But they're like, I don't want to do anything else. They still haven't gotten to the Maldives. They also still haven't taken a vacation. So if we're waiting for the big gestures, the big things, I'm going to take this month off and I'm going to do this. So I'm just not going to rest at all. As I talk about in The Bites as Entrepreneur, again, the first business book in the series, I talk about so many people that I met in Silicon Valley. I used to live up there about a decade and a half ago now. And they were doing the literally 24 hours a day. Red Bull and vodka was often their drink of choice. They were going hard, pushing, 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 so that they can get their app, their idea acquired by one of the big companies. We used to call them the FANG. It was Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, and Google. Wow, I could still remember it. Obviously, a lot of them have changed names, but like I said, it was about 15 years ago. And I wrote about that in Advice to Entrepreneur, where I'm like, look, let's say, sorry for the clap. Look, let's say you go ahead and you spend your 20s, because most of them were in their 20s. I was a little bit older. You spend your 20s working on this app. It gets acquired by, you know, Facebook, now Meta, but Facebook back in the day, and you have your own private island. You're going to be so burnt out and not used to resting that you're not going to be able to calm down. You think you're just going to ride off into the sunset? That's not how we're built. So when it comes to making time to rest, let go of the grand gestures. We don't need to do that. You could stop for a few minutes. For me, which sounds odd, I learned to use washing dishes almost like a meditative practice. Taking a walk with my kids and walking them back when I used to walk them to school or to, the babysitter, whatever the situation was. Now we have to drive because we're a little bit further out. But even actually, you know what, with the current school that they're in, I did walk them for a little while because we would park and walk. Now I had some memory locked in there. And that being a meditative practice, that being a form of rest. So it doesn't have to be this grand gesture. You don't have to put them into a lockbox and then one day you're going to open up and then suddenly have years of rest. Our bodies aren't built like that, and we need rest a lot sooner than that. So as far as making time to rest, the big thing you want to do is not worry about the grand gestures. Do something small. Take an extra 5 minutes while you're eating lunch. If usually I was always a quick eater when it came to when I had more traditional type of work. So the whole lunch hour, I probably wouldn't do it. It'll probably be, okay, let me get back to it. And maybe I'll leave to work early and all that stuff. Maybe take the 5 minutes. Take a breath. It doesn't have to be a grand gesture. Another part of it is to stretch timelines. If you've worked with me at all, I've talked about this quite a bit. If you've read my books, you've heard about it too. When I worked on So Quotable, which was the first startup that I worked on, did it myself, from the mud, as they say, solo proprietor, solopreneurship. And it was the same time that my former partner and I had our first kid. So our son is now 11 now. So you can do the math. And I'm stay-at-home dad while they worked, stay-at-home dad. I'm working and doing a startup and taking care of our little one. In that process, I'm looking at the folks with this first startup that my closest friends or people that really knew technology, they could have done the app I was working on called So Quotable. They could have did it in 5 days. No exaggerating. If it was someone like me who had the bandwidth to learn and I had to relearn programming language, so I used to know programming language, that would take someone 5 weeks. For me, it took me 5 months. but I had this little little brown boy I was taking care of. I still was bringing in income, so I'm still freelancing, doing all these other things, and of course managing the household because I was stay-at-home dad. I was able to accomplish that, which led to Cuddler, and Cuddler ended up being the app that became the number one app in the world twice over, and the cover of the Wall Street Journal. And then we ended up getting the app acquired. That experience directly came from me taking those 5 months with So Quotable, because Cuddler came within a few months after that. My whole point is that I had to stretch the timeline. If I did not stretch the timeline, I wouldn't have made it. I wouldn't have been well rested. I would have been an angry father and a bad partner. I might have been jacking up my freelance work again because I was still doing my traditional work along with the startup work. Maybe I wouldn't have made it to actually finishing So Quotable. And so without So Quotable, there'd be no Cuddler. Without no Cuddler, without Cuddler, then there would have been no TED Talks. With no TED Talks, then I wouldn't have started my coaching as well as my businesses. And without my businesses, we wouldn't be talking right now. No exaggeration. I can give you the direct timeline if you want to hear it. So stretching the timeline also makes it a lot easier to come through and do that. You know what I mean? My bathrobe is a very slightly weighted hoodie. Bathrobe, did I miss something? Yeah, you should have came in earlier. It's okay though. I'll explain in a second. going back to going back to the topic. If you're coming in later, thank you, Carlos. I appreciate you checking in. If you're coming in late, in case you missed it, today's show, how to rest at home. One of the strongest ways you can begin resting is by not doing the grand gestures. It doesn't have to be a big thing. And also stretching the timelines of what you have to do. Now, certain timelines, like, you know, making lunch for your kid for the next day of school, you can't stretch that timeline, especially, kids and also adults aren't the most patient people, right? So I'm not saying that. But there's certain things where you can stretch it. There's big projects that I want to work on right now, and some of y'all are privy to it. I wanted to get them done last year, and it's like I got a lot of personal stuff going on. I'm showing up for y'all. I'm doing a lot of ghostwriting, other things. I'm doing coaching. Again, you can learn more at DamonBrown.net. I'm outside. So there's certain projects that they might have to wait till the following year. And guess what? Now it's the following year. Now I have more bandwidth. Playing with the timelines is one of the strongest things you can do. Again, it's the hack. It's the hack. It's the hack. Now that we're on that subject, if you are going to rest, this is my favorite robe. I literally just recommended to a good friend of mine a few days ago because they were looking for a robe. I'm like, I got you. I swear by this one. This is the Riley 4-layer robe. You'll see some strings because I've had it for a few years. And this is, you can ask my kids, this is like the weekend outfit. Of course, clothes underneath, but this is the weekend outfit for sure. It was actually recommended by another really good friend. You know who you are. Thank you so much. It is cozy, it is cool, and very affordable. I'm not going to give prices on here, but it's very affordable. I'll put it like that. And I got it on a sale because kind of a family tradition. We usually are able to find the sales. Listen, you need something. Again, for Carlos, my bathrobe is a very slightly weighted hoodie. Ooh, I haven't gotten to the weight stuff yet. The weight blankets and all that. I haven't gone that route yet. Maybe that's next up. I appreciate your feedback. Whatever. For me, it's this. The link is below. I don't even think it's an affiliate. I just rock with Riley. Shout out to Riley. You know, shout out to Muggsy, by the way, the hoodie. They make comfy jeans too. Yeah, we need something. Listen, and I know you work, Carlos. You're independent just like I am. So if you're work from home, if you have the independent thing, we don't have, do a Silicon Valley throwback. We don't have the foosball tables. We don't have the masseuses. We don't have the spas, and we don't have the 5-star chefs doing buffets all day. You know, we don't have those stereotypical things that you see at the major companies that are in Silicon Valley. So we need to facilitate this ourselves. When you coach with me, I'm on the stool right now, and I will not be in a robe, but otherwise, it's going to be the same vibe. This is my office. My kids play like right over there. Like I make food right over there. Like this is the environment. If I'm going to make this a place where I can have a respite, then it needs to be active because I have a nice sized place, but there still needs to be a level of compartmentalization. When I put this robe on, again, usually over my clothes, it's just so cozy. Then my kids know the deal. It's like, okay, we're gonna chill out. The work is done for the day. Daddy's done working too. We're gonna relax. So it ends up being a signal, not just to you, but to the people that are also in your environment, which as a stay-at-home dad, that matters a lot to me. Thanks for your feedback, Carlos. Man, yeah, we got our Wade hoodies. It's a vibe. It's a vibe, as the kids say today. Another thing I recommend, and this is on my short list. If you watch some of the previous episodes, I rock with this, and you tell I'm a user because this joint's almost empty. Somebody wants to buy me one, let me know. I'm gonna get some more. I got it on subscription. Who am I kidding? Elemis, aching muscle super soap. I appreciate it. My former partner put me onto this. It can be very expensive, just to warn you, but you just need a little bit. Put this in your bath. I am middle aged and I got two little kids. I run multiple businesses. Either I'm going to be on a plane or train or automobile because I like to travel. I got family all across the coast, as I was talking about. Shout out to my family in New Orleans. Shout out to my family in South Jersey. Shout out to my family in Michigan. Shout out to my family next door in California, etc. Shout out to my folks that I will see in the near future. With the traveling, with the little kids, even just being middle aged, this is a godsend. Even like I think I've been rocking with this for years. Again, I got it as a gift. And even when I had those lean months, which I've talked about in the book, heck, I've talked about on the channel, I still found the money for this. So definitely check it out. If you're a bath person, rock with it. Another one that's a little bit more non-traditional, but I think you'd appreciate it is I think it's pronounced Zanli, Japanese floor. I'm sorry, floor. That's how you pronounce it. Futon mattress. We have some. My kids love it. I love it. It's this nice rollable mattress. I forget the Japanese term for it. I studied Japanese ages ago. I can't remember the term for it. But it's basically a rollable mat, and you just roll it out. If you're going to be resting from home, and if you work from home, particularly if you have kids in school or you have that environment where you're able to control the environment, you might want to get the nap in. It could be a nap where it's official, like I nap, so I'll nap for 45 minutes to an hour nowadays. But I'm used to napping. Some people don't nap. That's okay. Lay down and close your eyes. Take a deep breath. Listen to your favorite music. I have meditative music, and then, you see John Coltrane over there. So I got my record collection over there. Slowly growing it back up after I gave it away several years ago. That's a whole nother story. Maybe we'll talk about that in another episode. I got the obviously the traditional streaming music, and I got the music and the sounds of I'm right outside of Las Vegas, so the sounds of the city, and that in itself can be a reset. Again, try not to do the grand gestures. If you can do the grand gestures, that's great. I took my family to Italy um, years ago at this point, and it was great. We still talk about it. One of the kids was already around, the second one wasn't born yet. He still talks about it. It's fantastic. That's a grand gesture. But in all that, we did road trips. And all that, we've taken naps together. And all that, we've gone to the record store and then just vibed out to vinyl. Those grand gestures only come about so often, whether it's financial limitations, practical or schedule limitations, physical limitations. Enjoy it while you can. This is part of that energy. Roll out the mat, lay down for a few minutes, and then roll it back up, throw it in the closet. Roll it back out when you need it. It doesn't have to be this heavy routine. Along those lines, my favorite book ever to talk about sleep, Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker. I saw him speak at TED when I was fortunate to go in person 2019. Yeah, I've been semi-regular. I haven't gone over the last couple of years, but particularly pre-pandemic, I was there every year. And this is one of the last ones I think I saw before the pandemic hit. Fantastic talk. In fact, if you're watching the replay, I'll throw the link below. But He talks about literally why we sleep. He's a sleep scientist, as much as I used to be a video game scientist back in the 90s. You asked me about late 80s and early 90s video games. I can talk about it all day. Same thing. He's just the guy around this. He's the expert around this. And it's a fantastic book. I listened to the audiobook. Its audiobook is about 7 hours. Absolutely worth the time. We need to rest. It is mandatory. Absolutely. It's not for debate. It's not, oh, I'm not built like that. No. If you're human, there's a certain amount of rest that you need. I'm built different. No, 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 you're not. All of us need some form of rest. Now, that rest might not be hardcore sleep. It might be meditation. It might be time outside. It might be quiet. It might be music. But we all need some type of rest. If someone says they don't need rest and they're just built different, don't believe them. If you feel that way, we all got to catch up on the rest. And as someone that's had their ups and downs in regards to getting the rest that they needed, get two startups, two little kids, you pick one, 27 books, pick one. I definitely respect and understand burning the candle at both ends, burning to the midnight oil or hour. I think it's oil, however the saying goes. I get it. That's why I can be really direct with you. We all need to rest. And if we're not resting, then our body, our mind, and our soul, as I talk about in today's newsletter at Join Damon at Me, eventually our mind, our body, and our soul will go and check us and be like, no, yeah, you don't need rest. I think you might. So hopefully we get a chance to see that before it occurs. I'd love to hear, do you feel like you have a hard time stopping to rest? And if you've learned how to rest within your schedule, what are some of the techniques? Let me know in the comments. My entrepreneurial coach, Damon Brown, here to help you as a side hustler, solopreneur, otherwise an traditional entrepreneur. And you're watching Bring Your Worth TV live on Wednesdays at 1:11 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Vegas time. And today we are talking about how to rest at home. It doesn't sound as simple as it is. And at the same time, it really is as simple as it is. So let's get practical. How do I make time to stop? You know you need to stop. You're aware of it. You're like, yes, Damon, I need a break. Yes, I need a break today. Just like McDonald's. What are we doing? It comes down to a few different ways that you can carve it out. Again, I run multiple companies, all startup B ideas, including the show. I got two little kids at home. I'm middle aged. If anybody can do it, you know what I'm saying? You can make it work. The first thing I would recommend is picking your three priorities. What are the things that are most important to you? When I was co-founding Cuddler along with Charlie. Shout out to Charlie. We were co-founding it together. We had a 250,000 users, so even though we were co-founding it together, it was still quite a dragon to ride, as one of my mentors said, or a rocket ship to get on, however you want to phrase it. I knew that my priority was my partner and my kid. If my partner and my kid were all right, and I was giving them all the resources that they needed and that we needed as a family, then everything else would fall into place. So I did what needed to be done. Now that's a drastic, intense version of it. But once we sold Cuddler, say in 2015, 2015, do the math now. Well, yes, 10 years ago, we sold Cuddler. Then my priorities could shift. Then it could be like, all right, I'm going to rest more because I don't need to get up at the crack of before dawn to go ahead and work on this startup. Because remember, got a baby at home that became a toddler. He still needs to be taken care of. He was getting older, and so he didn't need me as much. He was getting around, which if you're a parent or raised a kid, it's a mixed bag. But he was getting around, so his priorities changed. He didn't need me as much, and so he became more dependent. So he became more dependent at the exact same time that we sold the startup, and it's like, so I had a level of freedom. Right now, you get my kids are in elementary school and just started middle school. So I'm able to double down on hanging out with y'all on the show. I'm able to do more coaching and open up my coaching schedule more. I'm able to do a lot more ghostwriting, and I'm ghostwriting for some of y'all right now, as far as with the keynotes and helping y'all with your books. Like, This is a natural progression of that. So, what are your three priorities right now? Is your priority your health? Are you burnt out? Do you need some rest? Is that a priority? Is your priority to get into a better financial position so you can get ready for the future or even make things better now? What are those priorities? And I'm doing this because they shift. They're not fixed. The priorities I had, say, when I was in my mid 20s, they're not priorities at all now. Almost laughing. It's like, what? Okay, I cared about that. Okay, well, I guess that was important, you know. And I'm guessing when I'm in, say, my 60s, I'm gonna laugh at the priorities I had now. But they make perfect sense at this moment. What are the three priorities? Just three that make sense at this moment. If you say everything, then that's not true. It's not possible. We have to have a list. Now, the three priorities don't necessarily need to be in order. They don't have to be one, two, three. But I would say three is kind of the maximum we can do. Like I said, my main priority, 10, 11 years ago when I was helping lead Cuddler was, okay, let me, like, this baby boy, and my partner are the world, particularly this baby boy. My main job is to be a dad. And that came from me recognizing that I wasn't going to get that chance again. Even though, my former partner and I had another child, it's still, and blessings to both my kids, but knowing that that first time through was going to be it. That was it. And I was right. Luckily, I listened to people that are much wiser than me. They said, yo, I know you got the startups going on, you got this happening and that happening, you got the TED conference, da, 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 da. Bro, you're only going to have this first one once. And you're only going to go through this for the first time once. And they're right. I'm glad I listened. Because of that, then my priorities were based on where, frankly, they needed to be. So number one, picking your first your three priorities. That's how you begin to stop. Then once you pick those priorities, up to three, no more. Could be one priority, but up to three, no more. Then you build your world around them. Then you say, these are my priorities. Everything else is second. Everything else is secondary, tertiary, if you want to get really aggressive and academic with it, and you want to have your list. All these other things are third place. But these two are my jam. Everything's built around that. That also helps you career-wise too. The reason why I've been able to do so many different books and have the show and do the talks and all those things, people have asked me that quite a bit over the years. And the reason is because I really have just one or two priorities. It's to help you as a side hustler, solopreneur, otherwise a non-traditional entrepreneur, and to do it in as many mediums as makes sense to help you get to the next level. So me doing this TV show is just an extension of the books I've been doing for years. Me doing a talk, whether it's one of the TEDx talks, or I'm doing a talk for one of the nonprofits or one of the major colleges. It's an extension of the work I was already doing. It's just in a different format. That way makes it a lot easier so that when there's great opportunities, I'm thankful for all of them. When there's great opportunities that come, but they don't move on this message or this mission of helping you as a side hustler, solopreneur, otherwise an entrepreneur, then it doesn't compute. It doesn't. I'm like, okay, that's all right. All right, well, that's not for me, and because I've been willing to call away these other opportunities, it's allowed me to zero in, and then I am making more progress. And then the nice part about it is that over time, that becomes what you're known for. That becomes your specialty. So that becomes a virtuous cycle where more and more people are going to be coming through. So in a sense, narrowing things down will enable you to have a better career, and in this case, also to have a little bit more rest. Lastly, and this is a tough one when it comes to stopping, is actually setting up the boundaries to enforce these priorities. Setting limits. Yeah, I can't do that right now because I have this, but I can do this over here. Yeah, the opportunity sounds amazing, but I'm not the one for that. But let me recommend someone else. But if there's an idea that comes around where it fits into the direction I'm going in, then I will rock with you, just not right now. That sounds tough. And it's sometimes tough to close that door or to say, not right now. But sure enough, I've experienced it after you've been in the game or doing your career for a while, you start to see cycles. The stuff I'm talking about, I talked about in Build From Now. Again, my favorite book of the Bring Your Worth series. Build From Now is in here. I talked about it and it came out in, I think it was this, no, it was actually the last week of January. Last week of January, January 28th, I believe, of 2021. If you were there in our previous programs, then you know that we were in the thick of the pandemic worldwide. Now there's a lot of stuff going on in the world, and we're 4 years later. And it's like, oh, a lot of those things become relevant again. So a lot of people in organizations didn't understand what I was doing with Build From Now. They understood it in 2021. Then they didn't understand over the last few years. Like, well, why are those things important? And I have plenty of episodes talking about Build From Now, or you can look up the book and learn more about it. And then now it's like, oh, that conversation's coming back. Now we feel that sense of chaos. A lot of us do, but we're not sure what our next move is. And the argument, again, from the title is build from now. Start building right now. If you build right now, then you'll be able to have some traction and make that impact on the world. As we go and we set these boundaries, we're not going to see the roots right away. We're not going to see the benefits. There was a networking event and you decided to rest, spend that time with your family or drink some tea or just have some quiet so you can be ready for the next thing. In the short term, it's like, oh man, you should have been at that event. It was great. Da, da, da. In the long term, though, maybe you get that rest or that recovery that you actually needed. So then when the next event does happen, you're on point. It's the short-term sacrifices. My favorite saying nowadays, hard short-term decisions, easy life. Easy short-term decisions, hard life. In other words, you're going to pay for it now or you're going to pay for it later. And I'd rather do it in a net positive way, as the accountants say, and get my rest now. Be in my robe on a random Wednesday and chat with y'all about resting versus pushing so hard that something ends up breaking. So pick your 3 priorities, build your word around them, and set boundaries to enforce them. When it comes to understanding your emotions and getting the rest that you need, they are actually, I believe, hand in hand. There's a cute little thing that I found that I brought from my family. It's a throw pillow that actually has some motion wheels on it. I can go and show you guys, but I think you might have signed up before, or you can do a Google of it. It's basically a wheel that has all the different emotions on it. It's adorable. If you have kids like me, heck, if you're an adult like me, it's something where you can point and say, I'm feeling disappointed, angry, and embarrassed. Sometimes we feel all those different emotions. One of the best things I heard from a therapist, and I still think about this to this day, is that sometimes our emotions are overloaded. And I studied computers back in the day and programmed the first startup that I did, et cetera, et cetera. So I have kind of that analytical mind. And it's almost like a circuit breaker, right? Where it's like, if you owned a home, you know what it is, where you go in and you turn on the hair dryer, which takes a lot of energy, at the same time that you turn on the dishwasher, and the circuit breaks. And you're gonna go into your basement. I had my teenage years in the Midwest, so you go into the basement, or here, or maybe even on the East Coast, where I'm originally from, you go outside, you got the circuit breaker, you got to break it, da da da. There's so many things that are happening at the same time, it overwhelms the circuit and it breaks. That's what happens a lot with our emotions when we're overwhelmed, when we're anxious. We're feeling 5 different things at once. This is one of those things that'll break it down and make it also do that. And video games are also my reset. They were a lot more when I was younger, and they're still kind of that reset now. I get it. I respect it. So wherever you find that respite, thank you for the feedback. Wherever you find that respite, I think that's a big part of it. And part of that, I think, is figuring out where those feelings, not necessarily where the feelings come from. I think that helps. That helps me personally, but more importantly, what the feelings are. And as other people have told me, maybe it doesn't matter where they came from. They're here. Identify them, see what's going on. Speaking of, shout to Dr. Charmaine Jackson. Hope you're doing wonderful. My well worn shirt, you've seen it on here. Literally well worn. You see the letters. It's called Get You a Therapist. Let me say it in the mic. Get you a therapist. I have 2 degrees in journalism, and I approve of the language on the shirt. This is fantastic, wonderful shirt. It actually helps support I know Psych, which is Dr. Jackson's thing. So I appreciate you and I appreciate the work you're doing. I've worn that shirt to family reunions. I'll leave it at that. But I'm one of those guys. It's great because particularly for minority communities such as myself. I'm part of the African American community. My former partner, as well as my kids, are part of the Hindi community. So we have all kinds of different cultures bounced around our home. When it comes to us, shout out to Kendrick, when it comes to us, we tend to not get the support that we need. When it comes to the mental support, we tend not to get the rest that we need, more so than other communities because frankly, we're used to grinding it out. We can get to the whole history of that. We'll save that for another episode. So, for there to be a shirt that is actually run by, actually an African American woman, and that representing so many things that are a challenge in many communities of color, including many communities of color that I'm a part of, that are my family, it says something. So, check out the shirt, contribute to the cause, and more importantly, if you feel like you're not resting for a reason, then it might be worth checking out and talking to someone else. A friend helps, but a paid professional, they're on a whole different level. Listen, I got a lot of friends, and I still have a wonderful therapist. You know who you are. Thank you. I appreciate you. One of my favorite books on the subject, Essentialism by Greg McKeown, gets into a lot of the stuff that I talked about earlier, where knowing what your priority is, why it matters. He's also relatable to me because he's a dad. He has 4 kids. The opening story will break your heart because he talks about his relationship with his kids, particularly when they were born. Ooh, it is intense. So this guy has done the work because he's very honest about where he has been. He was, before all this, he was not a guy that would write a book about essentialism and knowing what matters. There's some great graphics in here. Ah, here we go. I just pull it out. And this is such a pretty book. I didn't dog ear this one, but I can just pull something randomly out. A non-essentialist, someone that just does everything. They think I can do both, and they ask, how can I do it all? Right? An essentialist, which is what he's arguing with essentialism, asks, what is the trade-off I want to make? Listen to the language. And ask, what can I go big on? What is the trade-off? I already got memorized. What is the trade-off that I can make? If my family wants me here and I want to be there with them, and I have this conference going on over here, and I have this major project due, and I have this networking opportunity over here, what is the trade-off? Because at least in this day and time that I know of, we can't duplicate ourselves. So what's the trade-off? Something's got to be let go. There's trade-offs I made when I made my 2 big startups. I knew I was making the trade-offs. I was conscious of them. I'm like, bet. It was worth it to me, but it was a conscious decision. I emphasize that in my business coaching. Make your decisions conscious. Okay, you're not going to see your family much for the next month because of this opportunity. Face that. Be like, is this a trade-off that I want to do? And then that second question, how can I go big on these particular things? Fantastic book. I can't recommend it more. I've been recommending it for years. Shout to Greg, who's done at least 1 or 2 other books since then, but I'm stuck on this one. This book came out 15 years ago. Definitely worthwhile. You see, it's the hardcover. I don't mess around with that. Great video to watch after this is how to quickly prioritize your life right now. It's only 5, 6, maybe 7 minutes long. It's episode 71, so we're talking years ago. So you'll see a baby Damon in here, a little bit less gray hair, and it's just a basic, simple thing. Promoted, first heard of it by Stephen Covey, rest in peace. More of my mom's generation than mine, though his son is out here and he's around my age, keeping the legacy going and talking about how to prioritize things. And that has to do with rocks. Simple. Again, video might be 5 minutes. Check it out, and I think you'll be able to get more of that. You know. Hey, fantastic. Yeah, there we go. Thank you, Victoria. It's good to hear that feedback. I think you're really going to enjoy it. Yeah, get into it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Man, that first, just to warn you, that first chapter is heartbreaking, just as I said. But shout out to you, Victoria. I'm so glad that you went with my recommendation. And I hope you enjoy the book. Yeah, for sure. But it's a good place to start. So what about y'all? How are you stopping? We had Carlos chime in talking about video games as part of how he stops. I was talking about, and at least I talked about earlier in the episode about meditation, about taking long baths. No, sounds like the Pina Colada song, but like taking long baths, meditating. That's been a part of my practice for a while. Taking naps. I took a nap today. Your boy was knocked out. I loved the nap. It was such a good nap. And that's part of how I reset. But the thing is, here's the secret, is that I run my own businesses. I don't clock in, so I made the decisions necessary, the trade-offs. Again, shout out to Greg McEwen with Essentialism. I already made the trade-offs to allow me to take a nap in the middle of the day, to be wearing a robe, and to make passive income, make money, continue to take care of my family based on my lifestyle. So there are trade-offs along the way. How do you stop? Let me know in the comments. Even if you're watching the replay, jump in the comments. I'd love to hear. And I'm sure the rest of the audience would like to hear how they can actually stop as well. I'm entrepreneurial coach Damon Brown, here to help you as a side hustler or solopreneur, otherwise a non-traditional entrepreneur. You're watching Bring Your Worth TV. How do you stop? I gave some recommendations about how to stop. How do you stop right now? If you're already good at it, how do you stop in your busy lifestyle? If you're watching this, you probably have a busy lifestyle as well. Love to hear your comments. It's definitely coffee time, so here's a coffee break, speaking of resting. Shout out to Saigon Coffee. They are not a paid sponsor. I just rock with y'all. I think it's SaigonCoffee.com. I love your stuff, but you already know that. Shout out to San Diego too, which is where I got to know them. So you want to rest, and you're like, Damon, how do I set boundaries? I got my kid pulling on my leg. Some little kids pulling on my leg. I got my spouse needed this, my partner needed this, my work needs this, the world needs this. I have a startup, I just got funding, or I don't have any funding, I need to go find funding. We can keep going on and on down the list. It's tough. It's tough to set boundaries. One of the first things you can do as far as setting boundaries is to use scheduling software. I use Calendly. I forgot to put the link in there, but I can put it in the replay. I use Calendly. It's calendly.com. No sponsor, just I rock with them. Shout out to them. Where it actually will take my entire schedule. I have a family schedule that's with my former partner as well as my kids. I have my schedule, and of course, I have my business schedule. It's like I'm going to coach this person, da da da, all these different things. Calendly will take all those, mash them all up, and then I will work with Calendly, and this is where a little bit of work comes in, and says I want to have coaching appointments Monday through Thursday. But maybe not on Wednesday because I have the show on Wednesday and I have a newsletter. Wednesdays are usually pretty busy with my business and personally otherwise. And then Friday, maybe we'll end it off early Friday because I sometimes will go and get my kids from school and then we'll go and hang out for the rest of the afternoon. I don't want to be doing business calls then. And weekends are definitely out unless there's special notices. See all these, those are boundaries. Wednesdays, I got y'all. I've had this show. I've been hanging out with y'all. This is episode 410. I think 410, episode 410. So 410 times I've hung out with y'all. A lot of those are live shows, which means Wednesday at pretty much at this time throughout the whole time. So it's like, yeah, Wednesdays are busy. So I don't want to connect on Wednesday. That's a boundary. You put those boundaries in the calendar, and they're like, bet. We got the family calendar, we got the business calendar, we got your personal calendar. Great. And you said you only want to connect on these times. Perfect. When someone says, hey, like say one of y'all goes to damerout.net and you click on the link as far as wanting to coach with me, and we have a 15-minute free consultation, you're like, great. You're not going to see me on a Wednesday. You're going to see the calendar, and it's going to be maybe Thursdays, Tuesdays. We usually have some space on Monday, but it's already arranged for that. So I don't need to do the back and forth. I don't have to email you. You don't have to email me. You just go ahead and pick a time, and then we'll talk about it. That sets up boundaries. It's not a discussion. I don't have to say, hey, yeah, I know you want to coach this Wednesday, but I don't coach on Wednesdays. I don't need to do that. It's in the software. I've been using Calendly for probably a decade plus at this point. Huge fan of them. Again, I'll throw the link in the replay, but it's just Calendly.com. Another one which I see a lot with people I care about, as well as with a lot of people that are ambitious like myself, is we have to remember to put Slack into our calendar. I don't mean I don't mean the app. Shout out to Stuart and all the people that founded it. No, I don't mean the app Slack. I mean literally Slack. Because if something goes wrong or you go a little bit over, then your whole schedule is going to be jacked. I've known folks that have had a meeting at it's around 2 p.m. here in Vegas. So they'll have a meeting at 2 p.m. to 2:15. Then they'll have a 2:15 meeting. And have a 2:30 meeting. And it's like, okay, do you need a bathroom break, a snack break, a coffee break, a break to implement whatever you got if you're in meeting culture, right? To implement whatever you learned in that meeting to actually implement it so that you can get you can actually do the next meeting effectively. Like when are you breathing? And worst of all, again, if something goes over or if there's a breakthrough, again, with this show, excuse me, traditionally with this show, I will end it around 2 o'clock. So usually be 45 minutes. But there's so much stuff in this episode, I'm going over. But luckily, I have this nice buffer after every Wednesday when I do the show, because there's some shows that are like a half an hour long. Really quick, in and out, not a lot of comments. This one, y'all been jumping in the comments. I have a lot to say about it. We're about to hit an hour. We're going to be wrapping up in like 10, 15 minutes. But you know what I'm saying? Like that's slack. That's flexibility. That's why I'm relaxed, talking to you in my robe, drinking my coffee. We're chilling. I'm not running off to the next appointment. As much as you can create slack. Now, my former coaching client, Jenny Gritters, who's also a coach, shout out to her. She's doing some wonderful stuff this week with the retreat. Hope you're doing wonderful. Um, and other folks that I've mentored or coached, they talk about there being a season. And I've been talking about this for years, and we're all on the same page. You have a season of this. So you might have a season where you don't have a lot of slack. You're doing back-to-back meetings. That was my 2 years leading the two startups. Excuse me, so quotable for those 9 months and co-founding Cuddler and leading it for that following year. There wasn't a whole lot of slack, right? I was on the go. Yeah, it was always moving. And it was a moment to breathe, and it was a really deep breath or took a really quick nap, usually not on purpose. I just fell asleep because I was exhausted. And that was the season. This season, working with a lot of y'all as a ghostwriter, have the show, of course, doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes with publishing. We'll get into that. You'll find out later on this year. So doing a lot of stuff with that. But there's a certain mellow pace to this year. This is the season. So I can have, hour and a half hanging out with y'all and not have to rush the next appointment. What season are you in? If you're in a season where things can slow down, it can be really easy to keep piling stuff on because we're used to that. We're used to being busy. As I talked about in the newsletter today over at joindamon.me, today's newsletter was going nowhere fast. So if you just look for that on the page, I was talking about how us being busy can often mask an insecurity that we have. So what happens when you hit a season and you're not busy? A lot of my older generation of family members are reaching retirement or have hit retirement. Excuse me. And I see them going through this where it's like, oh, well, what's my worth then? Well, I'm used to doing this job for the past 40 years. What do I do now? And it's not a matter of just being busy because people are phrase that as being busy. It's not. How am I contributing? Because if I'm not contributing in this way, then what am I worth? I don't know what my measurement is. I'm not getting a regular paycheck anymore. I'm not I'm not showing up from 9 to 5 anymore. I'm not tired from a hard day's work. So then what am I? Am I still providing? What's my place in the family? All these questions come up. Again, I got a lot of relatives that have recently retired or are retiring right now. These are real questions. But these questions, I believe, shouldn't be based just on retirement. They should be based on any type of transition. Once you get to that, then it makes it a little bit easier. And then as you build Slack in your schedule and as you use the scheduling software, then you really want your inner circles to have your back. Now, I mean that in two ways. Number one, to respect your boundaries, as in they're not going to, if you're obviously exhausted, they're not going to take from you emotionally or otherwise. I don't mean money, I mean emotional labor. If you're having a rough time and they're talking about their rough time, well, you're talking about your rough time. It's like, all right, but I called you, right? So that kind of boundary thing, what a therapist told me is called emotional leaks. So sometimes we have these boundary leaks that come in. The second part isn't just that they're going to support your boundaries. They're going to remind you of your boundaries. I don't know how many times my friends who I consider family, you know who you are, might be watching right now, are like, I'll say, you know what, I'm going to do this. And they'll be like, well, I mean, if you want to do that, we'll support you. But 6 months ago, you said this. And you said this, that, and the third, as we used to say. You said this, that, and the third. And have those priorities changed? That's when you kind of sigh and you're like, no. It's like, all right, listen, you can go ahead and do that, but it sounds like you're not respecting these boundaries that you set yourself. That's why it's important, long story short, to have people that will hold you accountable. This could be in a business setting, this could be in a personal setting. Hell, I have both. I wouldn't trade them for the world because we can get caught up in our own madness and caught up in our own sauce, particularly in the environment and the dynamics that we have today. It's rough. It's rough because then people have their own issues and chaos and anxieties and all that stuff. And energy leaks, boundary leaks are all over the place. Certain seasons have more chance of an energy or boundary leak than others. We're in one of those seasons right now. That's why I talk about Build From Now and the books I'm about to talk about right now. That's why they're so important and so relevant in the bigger sets. So if you're going to set boundaries, use scheduling software, make Slack in your schedule, and get other people's support. Here are some tools that will help you do that. I already mentioned Calendly. Excuse me. I didn't get a chance to put the link in there. Out of all the books I'm talking about here, respect to them, Rest is Resistance. I get the words out of my mouth. Rest is Resistance. I read this book about a year ago. Changed my outlook on life. It's fantastic. Basically, the argument, you can see now you can see the dog ears on that one. Basically, the argument is that we were kind of fooled to believe that rest is a privilege. That comes from a lot of, let's just call it colonialism, and that we're supposed to be machines. This goes back to the industrial age. Now we have the freedom, however you want to interpret that. Now we have the freedom to rest, to build a society, build a culture. And by culture, I don't mean just the big grand culture as in America or Canada, all that stuff, the world. I mean the culture like with me and my kids. That's culture. With me and y'all. Got 18,000 subscribers and a bunch of viewers every week. But we have a culture. This is a thing. The culture says it's okay to come as you are. Today I'm rocking a robe and drinking cold coffee. That's what we're doing today. We have the opportunity to make these cultures, whether they be small or massive. But And this is why I rock with her. We're not doing that because we're stuck in the patterns of the past. We don't believe we deserve to rest because we are told for a long time that we do not deserve to rest. We start to believe the myth that from capitalism, whatever argument you want to make, that we are machines, that we're supposed to be efficient. As I talked about in the newsletter the previous week, um, it doesn't, I think it was called, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. I think that's what it was called. It was a emoji of someone shrugging. It was one from the previous week. So it would have been from the, I think it was January 30th or 29th of 2025, if you want to look that up. As one of the links in there talked about, people aren't meant to be efficient. We're not meant to be efficient. We're meant to rest. We're meant to love. We're meant to stop. We're meant to work within the seasons. We're part of nature. Even nature doesn't work like that. There's a winter wind outside here in Vegas. It's warm, but it's a winter wind. You know it's wintertime. There's leaves all over. It looks like it's not even not even fall. It looks like winter here in Las Vegas. What would happen if it was 120 degrees like it normally is in the summer? We It would be insane. Everything will shrivel up. Even nature has its cycle. Even amongst climate change, nature still is doing its cycle. Why aren't we doing our cycle? This gets into that and much more. But wait, there's more. Shout out to my mom who got it for me. Let me know what was happening because I didn't know she had a second book. We Will Rest, The Art of Escape. Oh, does that not sound like Bringingworth TV? Hmm. This was literally my kid's bedtime story when I got it from my mom. Shout out to you. I think I got it from God in December. It came out a few months ago. Fantastic book. It's a small book. I just slowed myself down because I was going to read it too fast. So I ended up literally reading it to my kids just as I read many chunks of Rest is Resistance. This is a beautiful book. This is essentially the sequel. There's images, there's wonderful quotes. I love the design. I know some of you are design folks, so check out that beauty. Ooh, and poetry. Rest is refusal. Rest is life giving. Rest is power. Rest is medicine. Rest is heaven. Rest is now. Can said it better myself. And a beautiful little bookmark. All the links are below to these two gorgeous books. You've heard my quotes from them. And in fact, a couple of those quotes are actually my email signature. So if you haven't getting an email from me, you'll be hearing more about Dr. Hersey. Shout out to them. How are you setting boundaries? Because you can know that you need to rest. You can make time to rest, but without boundaries, you're not going to be resting at all. How are you setting boundaries with your family, with your loved ones? Um, I had a I had a moment. I might have shared this on the live show over the last couple of weeks. It happened, I believe it happened during spring break, during winter break, when it was just me and the boys and my kids. And I think it was a Saturday or a Sunday. It was a weekend. Let's say it was Saturday. It was a Saturday, and we were playing some video games, and then I was drinking some coffee, and I think we might have been going on a hike later. I don't know. Usual weekend stuff. Maybe go record shop or whatever we're gonna do. And it was around 1 o'clock. I might have been a little bit earlier. And I think it was my youngest, who's 8. And I was going to the bathroom, and he was like, "Are you gonna take your nap?" And I was like, I thought he was trying to be funny. I was like, "What do you mean?" And I kind of made this look, and he understood. He's like, "I mean, you usually take a nap over the weekend. Are you gonna take your nap now?" And I was like, "No, but yeah, maybe later." So even my kids are used to that routine where it's like, oh, part of the reason why, hopefully, knock on wood, daddy is a good dad, is that he's actually resting. He's actually stopping. He's not pushing himself all the time. So it's kind of like an equation. Oh, um, rest for dad. plus us being as loving as possible towards him equals him being a good dad. Like it's almost like they're putting down the formula when I don't even have the formula. I just know that when I'm tired, I'll be like, hey, I'm gonna go and lay down for a few minutes. And then again, they're old enough to take care of themselves, and it's usually for just literally just for a few minutes. But that's become so much of a routine that I won't even recognize it. But they were like, oh, that that's going into his bedroom. Oh, are you gonna take a nap now? I'm like, no, I'm just going to the bathroom. What? But that also, whether they realize it or not, of course they probably don't, is recognizing and enforcing those boundaries. So then they end up reinforcing those boundaries that I set, even though I didn't realize that I set them in that way. How are the people that you love, the people that you work with, people that you're around, how are they helping you reinforce your boundaries? The people you're around should not be pushing your boundaries, even though it does happen. Ideally, they're going to be the ones that are actually supporting their boundaries. They're going to be the ones that are fortifying you. That is a key hack. How are you setting up your boundaries, and how are you setting it up so that the people around you are supporting your boundaries? Or if you're in a fortunate enough position, how are people around you supporting your boundaries even when you don't even recognize it yourself? A great follow-up to this, you should watch this after it, is our live show, Five Secrets to Change and Transition. Learning to set boundaries, learning to rest, all that is change and transition. There is a difference between the two. That's why I keep separating them. I get into this episode some great feedback from the audience, y'all. It's a really good episode talking about how to transition into perhaps a healthier place, perhaps a place where you have healthier boundaries, perhaps a place where people around you will actually encourage you to get the rest that you need. I'm Damon Brown. I'm an entrepreneurial coach, side hustler, and otherwise non-traditional entrepreneurs. I'm your guide to help you on that journey. And you're watching Bring Your Worth TV live on Wednesdays at 1:11 p.m. Standard Time, Vegas time. You can subscribe for free on all the platforms, or I'll link below, or do it on the main platform here at bringyourworth.tv. Man, I love this episode. I love talking to you about how you can rest better. If you're watching a replay, let us know. How are you setting up boundaries? How are you learning to stop? And ideally, are there people in your circle, or are you building a circle where people will help you set those boundaries and help you reinforce that need for rest that literally all of us need? Here's to a restful week for all y'all. Remember, you can always bring your worth. You can always build from now. Take care of yourselves and others.